And again, the major story that we've been tracking all morning, we can head down to Washington, D.C., the U.S. Supreme Court, a major decision out of Washington. The justices have ruled that President Donald Trump does not have the authority to impose those sweeping tariffs using the emergency powers. At the heart of the case, how far can a president go in reshaping global trade without the approval of Congress? We want to bring in now Raymond Robertson. He is a trade economist down at Texas A&M. Raymond, you can hear me, right? Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
And as we know, this is a decision that we thought was going to happen, almost a month ago, 6 weeks ago. So a lot of people
That's
have been
correct.
watching this, waiting. What is your reaction to the U.S. Supreme Court, a ruling 6-3 that President Donald Trump does not have the power to impose these tariffs? When you heard that, what are you thinking?
I think this is an incredibly important decision for a couple of reasons. Number one is that economics has been teaching us for 100 years that tariffs are mainly paid by domestic consumers. So our businesses and our consumers have been paying these tariffs as taxes, and that has been affecting the economy. Secondly, Congress is responsible, as spelled out in the Constitution, for tariffs. And so this decision effectively returns that power back to Congress for the most part.
My understanding is that even though this decision definitely disrupts what the president was doing when it comes to the IEEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is traditionally used for national security threats to justify those broader tariffs, it doesn't mean he can't change the strategy, so to speak. What do we know about that? Is this the end of the tariffs, or can he sort of reshape or repropose what he wants to do?
That's a great question. And actually, this decision doesn't affect all the tariffs. I think it only affects about two-thirds of the tariffs that the president had been imposing. So a third of the tariffs will remain in place. And the fact that this decision has taken some time to kick in and to be issued means that the administration has time to find other strategies in order to find ways to raise tariffs in other areas.
And as we know, obviously the tariffs have been a major part of the president's strategy. In some sense, from a PR's perspective too, to sort of show I have the power, I am being decisive, I am doing something about trying to fix these trade problems, the imbalances that he has said that, and a lot of people acknowledge are in the international trade within the U.S. But a lot of critics had said, look, when you put these tariffs in place, it's going to have a crumbling effect from the U.S. economy. Has that happened, or have things sort of not played out the way a lot of the critics expected them to?
So, on the one hand, inflation hasn't risen as much as people expected. Prices didn't go up as much as people expected throughout the economy. So, that was something that had been expected that didn't really happen. On the other hand, there's anecdotal evidence throughout the country, whether it's individual consumers or businesses, or the businesses that were suing in this particular case, that said that they were significantly affected by tariffs and they were holding back on employment and jobs. So we're expecting that although it's not widespread price indices kind of effects, there's going to be localized effects on the economy that are going to be significant.
So if I'm a mom and pop business, and I've sort of adjusted my budget for 2026 already based on what these tariffs are, am I taking a look again? Do I see these things take effect right away, or a lot of people have to buy a lot of those products, whatever, even if it's parts you're going to use to build a car, or parts you're going to use to put together whatever it is, maybe an HVAC business or something like that. Have those businesses already baked in their budgets for 2026 in a lot of cases, and maybe this doesn't have that trickle down effect? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think people overestimate the speed at which these decisions affect the economy. And I think that these are going to be medium term decisions for exactly the reasons you described. And that's the way the tariffs affected the economy. It was slowly and built up over time. And now, when we remove them, it's going to slowly and build down over time and have businesses being showing their effects later on for sure.
What do you think it means for those businesses, though? Is this going to be a little bit of a relief, or are were they? I don't know. You can't put every small business into one category, but does this sort of spell some kind of maybe relief from buying those products by May or June or July or the summertime or something like that?
Yeah, so exactly using the description that you just made is that businesses had baked in a lot of these tariffs, and so when they're removed, this is going to be a windfall for lots of businesses, and it's going to be very interesting for us as economists to see if that's going to result in higher profits or more employment or expanding product selection. But it's probably going to be one of those, and we're going to see some effects. But obviously, it's impossible to know exactly which ones will be the most relevant.
I'm looking here. We have a feed coming in from the White House, where I think the president is meeting with some of the governors all across the country today. So I haven't seen his Truth Social account. I imagine that he will be responding at some point, and I'm sure he's going to have some non-public relation approved statements to make about it. But in general terms, I mean, some people have said, "Oh, this is damaging to the president. This is obviously a blow to his administration and his powers." What do we think about that? I mean, how will this affect what President Trump wants to do with the economy as a whole?
Well, I think the president and his team have been very creative about finding ways to raise tariffs without congressional approval. And they've made it very clear that they're not going to give up. And as I mentioned, a third of the tariffs are still going to remain in place. And so it's very reasonable to expect the president and his very creative team are going to continue to find other ways to try to impose these tariffs.
All right, so we'll be listening into anything that he may say. It looks like they're getting ready for a little bit of a news conference out there. I imagine it's probably going to be the governors who come out first. Just I'm just thinking here. I mean, the whole reason, aside from this showing a decisiveness that President Trump can show when you impose those tariffs, there is the overall concern about rebalancing the U.S. economy, bringing those jobs back home, creating these factories here so that the products can be made in America and that made in USA. I mean, sort of the whole driving force behind the MAGA movement. Had that been happening with the when these tariffs were imposed in the first place? I mean, we've had a little over a year now that a lot of these have been in place. Were there indications that the seeds were planted to do that?
So there's definitely anecdotal evidence that suggests that there were more software firms and chip manufacturing occurring in the United States. I've heard a lot of those. I know in Texas there was several examples of that. But at the other side of the coin, and economists always have on the other hand, that the jobs report about manufacturing last year wasn't as promising as we expected, and a lot of manufacturing jobs were actually lost last year. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done if we're going to be bringing those jobs back. We have to find more creative ways and ways to subsidize business and promote technological growth, trying to find ways to make these data centers much more effective and how they can affect employment and output. We have to get more creative by looking towards the future if we're going to be able to really recapture those manufacturing jobs.
All right, Raymond Robertson, Texas A&M University, a trade economist. I just have one or two more questions, just very quickly. I'm sure it's going to be a busy morning for you. Probably a lot to talk to your students about today. There is some indication that the tariffs that have already been put in place, there could be a refund, $175 billion in refunds to importers. That doesn't seem practical. It doesn't seem like that's the U.S. economy is just going to, or the U.S. government is just going to instantly cough up $175 billion to flow. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think the bureaucracy is really in a position to quickly send out refunds. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people who feel they deserve those refunds who are highly motivated to continue to pressure the government. So that's going to be something else we're going to be watching in the next several weeks.
You're teaching your students about this. You're going to have to sort of keep up on current events. What do you tell them about what this means about who controls U.S. trade policy? I mean, what does this mean? Just from a university perspective, an economic perspective.
Absolutely. So Congress clearly has the authority to set tariffs. And what we're hoping is that the president will find more creative ways to work with Congress in order to achieve the type of results that he wants, or that Congress can reach a compromise with the president. Because in the democracy that we have, the balance of powers is still very important. And we need to find ways to work together if we're going to be successful moving forward.
All right, Raymond. If people wanted to get in touch with you, I mean, do you have a blog or an Instagram page or anything like that you want to promote, or you have
I'm
anything?
definitely on LinkedIn, and I have a web page as well that's at Texas A&M at the Mosbacher Institute for Trade Economics and Public Policy in the Bush School of Government and Public Service.
All right. Well, the decision came down at about 10:01. We put the word out there that we're trying to track down an economist. You responded, and we're glad you did, sir. Raymond Robertson, Texas A&M University. Thank you so much.
Always at your service in the future.
All right.